Welcome back to the It's Too Easy podcast. I'm Zach, and this is my brother Jake. Thank you for tuning in. If you're here, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. Let us know what you want to hear, and let's get into it. Jake, what week? We got last week. Really, of college football was last week, so we got bowl games starting up this week. What is the slate looking like for us this week?
Yeah, so last week had a really good week in college football. Went 15-5, I think, overall, which is pretty solid. 75% of our picks hitting in college football. This week got a lot of championship games that are definitely catching my eye. First one being Oregon and Washington. This one at a neutral stadium, so Oregon is a favorite, having lost to Washington before. Um, I just think Oregon's playing better ball right now, and I think for that reason, I'm going to take the money line. I know the number is pretty big right now, like minus 370. So if you can get maybe some money to come back on Washington before you can buy that, you might be able to get it closer to 300. But I do think Oregon's going to win this game. This is a really good opportunity for our team to go into the college football playoff and make a statement with our good offense and defense. It's been pretty surprising to see how good our defense is playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely on Oregon. They should have won that game in Washington. Obviously, late two-play drive for touchdown for Washington, followed by a missed field goal to tie by Camden Lewis,
Yeah.
who's been solid for the last few years for them. Um, and I mean, yeah, going into a neutral site in Vegas, so it's Vegas. Yeah, will be different. Oregon's playing really good football. Washington, I think, has won like 8 of the last 9 games by one score, so they're kind of just squeaking by everybody. They haven't looked the best in doing that. Their offense has been shaky at times. Penix through 6 weeks was the Heisman favorite, and now we've heard nothing about him for the last 4 weeks. Obviously,
True.
Bo is the Heisman favorite now. He's been playing phenomenal, and I do think Oregon gets it done. I do think it'll probably end up being around a 7 to 10 point win for Oregon. So the fact that the line's at 10, having already
Yeah.
lost to the same team, is crazy to me. I was hoping to get him at like -2, -3, and be able to just take that with confidence. I'm not taking 10 with confidence. I'll probably buy it down to 6.5, or even wait to see the first possession. Because say Oregon wins the toss and defers, Washington should get the ball. Say they go score a touchdown, I'm going to immediately be able to get Oregon -3 then, um, just because they'll be trailing 7 quick and have to come back. So live betting is always good. If you want to buy it down, I do think they win. I want to say by 7. I would just buy it to 3 to be safe, and be happy with a push at the end of the day if it ends up being 3, because I do think they win by more than that. But Oregon, I think, gets it done and gets themselves a berth into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think this is finally going to be the year. I am going to sprinkle a little bit also on Washington plus 13.5, just buy a few points. You can get that at minus 175. I do think that this is going to be within that 7 to 10 point margin, so 13.5 feels pretty safe. I doubt it'll get to that point. If they do, I expect whatever team will be able to come back and cover, especially Washington, with their offense. Next game is Oklahoma State and Texas. Simple and sweet. Oklahoma State hasn't been great as of recently. Texas has looked pretty solid, especially last week. I'm buying that down to 6.5 and taking Texas. I just think that they're going to be able to win this game and kind of solidify their spot to hopefully get a chance to make it into the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oklahoma State's been super hit and miss. Obviously, they struggled hard with BYU last week, barely beat them in double overtime. There was a lot of pressure on that game for them, though. They needed to get back to the championship. If they lost, Oklahoma was going to be back in it, which would have been a rematch for Texas. Probably would have been even better for Texas to, overcome the team that had already beaten them earlier in the year, to
Yeah.
make a case for being in that top four, especially with Alabama still being one loss. Everyone was planning on putting Alabama in front of them going into last week. We talked about that. We knew Texas was going to come out hot because they're hearing all the noise. They did
Yep.
that. I think they won by 50. And on the other side, Alabama barely pulled off a last second 31-yard fourth down conversion for touchdown to win the game. So I think Texas has solidified themselves back above Alabama, but now they got to get the job done one more time. And I do think they're going to struggle with Oklahoma State, just because they haven't been playing the most consistent football. Granted, they play well. They have some of the best receivers in the country at Texas. If Quinn Ewers is on, it could be a blowout, but he's been super hit and miss since the injury. So I'm thinking about taking it down to 2.5 and just taking Texas 2.5, winning by at least a field goal. I'm not too confident that it will be a touchdown, just because he has been pretty shaky.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe play right there for sure. Boise State and UNLV. Um, I like Boise State in this game. This is just I think it's going to be a pretty back and forth game, but I think that Boise State, after this loss the last week, is going to be wanting to get one back. And especially in this championship game, they're going to have a good opportunity here against UNLV.
Yeah, I don't have a lean in the game. I was kind of hoping San Jose State was going to pull off a win last week, or even Fresno State to try and get there. I don't have a preference for either of these teams, so I'm just not going to touch it.
Right on. And then Georgia and Bama. I think Bama has pretty much got to win this game in order to make things interesting. And if things go the way they have the entire year, I think that's definitely going to happen. And I think we both kind of see it the same way. The safe play that we got here is Bama plus 7.5, but I am also going to sprinkle a little bit on the Bama money line just because it's at plus 180, I think, right now. And I love that, especially with the Nick Saban coach team that's starting to kind of find their groove. Um, they did struggle last week, but it was the Iron Bowl, so I'll give them that pass. And I think they just want to win this one against Georgia after the last few years. So give me Bama.
Yep, it's the last year of the 14 playoff for good. It's going to be 12 next year.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's going to end the way that it started with Alabama in there, at least in the top four, if not winning it. Nick Saban's been the owner of it until Kirby Smart took over the last few years. I do think it's going to be a dogfight. Probably a lot of, I don't even know, I was going to say a lot of ground game because both QBs aren't the best.
Yeah,
Neither
true.
team has that many weapons. They both run the ball fairly effectively, but they also have good run defenses. So I could actually see it being a fairly low scoring game. Uh, 21-17,
Yeah.
24-14, 24-21, something along those lines. It's going to be one in the trenches. So whoever can stop the run better and not give up the big play, I think that's going to be who comes away with the win. And I do think Bama's going to cover 7.5. I think that's a good play. And I'm also going to sprinkle on them money line. I know we gave out Alabama 14-1 and 8-1, about a month ago, when they had one loss and they still had a hard road to get through, starting with LSU. They made it
Hmm.
through that. Now they just got to win the SEC championship, and they're in that top four.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we'll stick with Saban, stick with Bama, even though I hate them. Go Dogs! But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yep. Next game is SMU and Tulane. SMU's kind of been coming on later in the season here, but Tulane's kind of been a rock throughout the season. We're just going to kind of ride with what we've been doing the entire year, or the entire season, I should say. That's Tulane. They've been, I think, the better team overall out of these two. So I'm just going to ride with them on the money line at 225.
Yep. Yeah, I like Michael Pratt. We talked about it all year. They beat USC in the bowl game last year after
Hmm.
having won their conference. I think they're going to win it again this year. I don't think they're going to have that much of a problem with SMU. SMU has a very explosive offense. Tulane's got a fairly good defense, though. So if they can get a couple turnovers, I do think it could get ugly quick because Michael Pratt's got some weapons, and Mickey Hughes at running back is a stud. So I do think Tulane pulls it off, and I hope that they cover even 10. I think the line started at 4 or 3. I think it's
Yeah.
moved up a little bit since then. But I do think Tulane's going to come away with the win. I watched SMU get annihilated by TCU, who wasn't good this year,
Yeah.
earlier in the year. I know they've improved a lot since then, but even a decent team like TCU, if they struggled there, I think Tulane's a better team than that and should handle them.
Yeah, totally agree. And then Michigan, Iowa, obviously Michigan after beating Ohio State, it's coming off looking pretty good. Iowa, shoot, just bet the under and you're good to go. Um, and this is another game where they just have that line too high. Obviously, if I were to pick a winner, I'd pick Michigan, but the line's at like minus 2,000, and it's just not worth pitting a penny into. So I'm loving that under 35 and a half. It's at minus 110 right now, and I'm going to hammer that for sure. Um, Iowa's defense is solid. Michigan's mainly a team that runs the ball, and Iowa can stop the run. And if they can do that in this game, then it's going to go under. So I love it.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing like a 23-0 or
Yeah.
20-0,
17-0,
13,
17-3.
13-3.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like something low. The under was set for 23.5 last week, and they were under again, 13-10 final. Was that 23
Yeah.
total? 26 the week before that. They don't give up any points. I know Michigan's got a good offense, but they're not that good. If you
No.
could stop the run like I was able to do, you're going to make McCarthy sling it, and even that they defend well. Obviously, he's got the weapons with Roman Wilson, Colson Loveland, Blake Corum, etc. But I don't think it's going to be a 23-point spread. I think is what I saw. I
Yeah.
think they're expecting. That means I think Iowa's expected to get 5 or 6 points total, which I'm not going to lie. I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they're going to score more than 3 unless it's off of a
Yeah.
turnover. Um, but I don't think Iowa's going to be able to give up that much. So under 36 should be a good play. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm expecting
I mean,
them to at least handle the ball a little bit better on offense than they have previously. Like if they turn the ball over on their half like they have in the last few games, it's over. And
mhm.
that I think that the over is going to hit. But I think that in this game, it's got a little bit more meaning to it, and they're 10-2, so they have a real shot at making a statement for that program. So I think that they're going to come out and play some solid ball, but they're going to lose 17-3, by a couple scores, 10 points. It's
Yeah.
going to go under. I'm feeling it.
Harbaugh's back too, so I think the
Yeah.
team's going to be probably playing pretty well. But also that could mean that Iowa shows up to play. I don't think
Mm,
there's any value in betting Michigan on the money line because
mm.
they're so heavily
It's
favorited.
so inflated.
But
Yeah.
so because of that, I would sprinkle on Iowa on the other side plus 23, maybe even money line, just because it's a lot of value there. Like throw
Yeah.
$5 at it and see
You might even be able
see
to
if
buy
Iowa
that
does kind
up
of
if it's at
upset.
23. Yeah, if it's at 23, you might even have a chance to buy that up to like 27.5. It's super safe.
Yeah,
But I
so that should
mean,
be an
shoot,
interesting game.
my luck, it's 30-0 and it hits the under, and then they they go over that. But yeah, I mean, it should be a solid game. So I'm looking forward to watching it. It's going to be a really defensive game, and it's not something you usually get in college football. So last game is Louisville and Florida State. Florida State obviously just came back and beat Florida after a rough first half. But I like Louisville in this game. They had a rough game themselves last week, losing to Kentucky, but it was a super high scoring game. I think if Louisville can kind of keep their offense going, they should be able to beat Florida State without Jordan Travis. So I'm going to sprinkle quite a bit onto Louisville money line at plus 110.
Hmm. Yeah, I said it last week. I think Kentucky's going to knock off Louisville, and Louisville's going to bounce back and beat Florida State. Kentucky did just that. They went in there and they beat Louisville at home. I said I didn't think they were a one-loss team. They're 2, 3,
Yeah,
and they're a good two-loss team right now at 10-2. I do think that they're going to go in without Jordan Travis being there. They struggled against Florida. Obviously, they pulled it off at the end. The better team should be able to do that, even in the swamp. Um, they're a good team. They run the ball well. They have the weapons on offense. The QB didn't look that bad. I do think Louisville's defense is going to be able to test them a little bit more because they just got ran all over not too long ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, by Miami. And if they let Trey Benson run all over them, that's going to be an issue for them because Jack Plummer, I think his name is.
yeah.
He probably will throw at least one pick. He's a turnover machine. That's a
Hmm.
problem. But in
Good little
doing
player
that, I think
prop.
yeah, good player prop if you can find it. Plummer's going to throw a pick, probably two. Um, I'm going to be at the game. I'm betting Louisville on the money line. I do think they're going to win. If you want to take it with points, they opened up getting 5.5. I think it's down to 2.5, but I'd buy it to 3.5 or just take them on the ML. I think they're going to knock out Florida State, and neither of those teams is going to be in the college football playoff hunt.
Yep. I think that's pretty solid. Louisville money line just feels good right here. Kind of transitioning to NFL now because that's kind of it for the college games. First game is Seahawks and the Cowboys. Cowboys are heavy favorites right now at 9.5 against a pretty solid Seahawks teams, but Cowboys are at home. They have won most of their home games, I believe, this season by like 15 or 20 points, so it does make sense. I don't like that line, so I'm going to buy it to 5.5 just because feels like their Cowboys are due for a game where it's close or it makes at least the fans sweat a little bit. So yeah, I'm liking that minus 5.5 at minus 195 right now. Feels like a pretty solid number.
Yeah, Cowboys have won all 5 home games by 20 plus points. They're continuing to roll. It's a short week, Thursday. Gino's been banged up. Kenneth Walker was out last week. I just feel like this is one of those matchups, kind of like the Chargers, where it ends up being a fairly close back and forth game. Maybe a couple turnovers. Neither team runs the ball very well, and it allows for an interception to be thrown, probably by Geno and Dak this week. Both teams have good corners, good young teams that play the game well. Two good coaches. I think the under is going to hit 48. I believe is what I saw it at.
Wow.
Seemed a little high, and then. I do think, yeah, I know the line opened, I think, at 7.5. If it's up to 9.5, I would probably just take the Seahawks plus 10.5 because I do think it'll probably end up being a one score game. If anything, I see the Cowboys maybe winning 27-17. I think the Cowboys win. I think they win by probably a touchdown. So I think 5.5 is a safe line where you took it at. But if it's 10.5, I might take the Seahawks plus 10.5 because, like you said, I think they're due for a game that's not a blowout at home, and the Seahawks
Yeah,
are a better team than a lot of the teams that they've played at home.
for sure. Then Colts and the Titans. Not too much to say about this one. Titans got a nice win last weekend. They're at home in this game. I think coach is going to have them ready to play, so I'm thinking Titans money line this game. Derrick Henry also had 2 touchdowns last week, so maybe that kick starts him into a groove, and they're able to run it all over the Colts. But yeah, I like the Titans in this game. Minus 105.
Minus 100. Okay. Yeah, I knew they opened up as, I think, 3-point dogs as well. I was leaning on Titans this week. I've talked about it all year. Vrabel usually finds a way to get near 500. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
still 4-7, and they usually play divisional games tough. I know they lost, I think, by 7 to the Colts earlier in the year. I think it was 23-16, if I remember right. It was a good game. Obviously, low scoring. I kind of expect the same thing to be the case this week. So
Yeah.
if it's looking over 42, 43, I'm not sure what the over under is at right now. I would probably take the under on that as well. No Jonathan Taylor. That's news as of today. So I'm sure that affected the line. But I am going to take the Titans on the money line. I think they come away with a win here.
Yep, I like that. And then Chargers and Patriots. Patriots are kind of in shambles. I think Bill Belichick's kind of playing the field to see where he's going to end up next. I like the Chargers minus 5.5. This is kind of a get right game for a team that's looked absolutely garbage. And I just think in this scenario, the Patriots are worse and the Chargers are going to win by a score or more, maybe even 10, 13 points. Maybe Keenan Allen has a huge game here. But yeah, Chargers minus 5.5 at minus 120.
Yeah, I just kind of thought to myself, I'm not going to touch the game because the Chargers continue to surprise me with how bad they play.
Yeah.
Uh, they're just terribly coached. I'm surprised Staley hasn't been fired. Like I said, I thought he'd be fired within 24 hours of the game ending. It's now Tuesday night. He hasn't been.
True.
And maybe this is, I'm starting to think like Chargers should win this game handily. The Pats just lost to the Giants 10-7. That being said, DeVito looked fairly good and they only gave up 10 and they missed a 35 yarder to
Hmm.
tie it.
Yeah, their
Their
defense does
offense
look
is,
fairly good.
yeah, their defense still looks good. Their offense just looks bad. And with Belichick being one of the candidates that I think that the Chargers look at the end of the year, I'm starting to think that maybe this is one of the games where he goes out and he just outcoaches Staley to a win for the Pats, which I believe is at home
Yeah,
uh, for them.
could be
So
cold
because
too.
of
Yeah,
because of that, I'm not going to touch the game because I feel like Chargers should dominate. I feel like Belichick might outcoach Staley and just show him like, hey, fire this guy, bring me in at the end of the season, and let's try and work something out because they Chargers have the talent on offense and defense. They just need better coaching.
yeah, 100% agree. Next game is Lions and the Saints. Man, you and I have been back and forth. I mean, you alone have just been like, oh, I think I like the Saints, and I'm like, oh, but the Lions are good. But we're just back and forth on this. I think kind of ultimately where we're both at is the safest play is the Saints plus 7.5. I got that line at minus 195. I feel like the Lions are due to absolutely smoke somebody, so there's a good chance that can happen. But the Saints have been one of those gritty teams that they're not very good. They just manage to stay in games or at least give themselves an opportunity to win the game late. So for that reason, I do like them plus 7.5.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to touch the line at all for this game because I don't know. Like you said, I'm kind of leaning on Saints money line at home after losing to the Falcons. But
Yeah.
their offense, man, I think they still have only scored 20 points one time. They're so bad. Uh, and then Mike Thomas went down. Derek Carr's questionable. Like at this point, just stop putting him in questionable. Let Jameis sling the rock. You know you're going to get picks, but he's also going to like score a couple times. So
Yeah.
I would put Jameis in at this point and just stick with him through the end of the year. They're tied for the division, actually losing it now, having lost to the Falcons last week. They need a win. They're at home. I also don't like their coach. I talked about that the very first episode. Dennis Allen's a bum.
Yeah, they
The
need a new
Lions are well
offensive
coached.
coordinator. Yeah.
And the Lions are well coached, and they should go in and dominate this game. I just don't see it being one of those games where they dominate it. I do see a lot of field goals, so I think the best play for this game is to take Riley Patterson over 1.5 field goals.
Cool. Yeah, I like that too. I feel like this is going to be a very field goal dominant game, probably at least 2 on each side. So if you can get a
Mhm.
sick prop for that, or maybe parlay something up for that, that'd be kind of sweet too. Next game is the Falcons and the Jets. Um, Jets are just kind of tough to watch on offense, man. They're no matter who's back there, they can't put it together. It feels like that offensive line was only built for Aaron Rodgers, and first series of his time with the Jets, they let him down too. So here we go again. I just think that the Falcons kind of have a little bit more grit. They lost. Did they lose last week? They beat the Saints.
Falcons beat the
Um,
Saints.
but
Yeah.
yeah, they looked okay, I think, with Ritter back. I watched some of the highlights of that game, and I thought that he at least showed a little bit of comeback in him. I do think that they have a good shot in this game, especially with the Jets offense that is really struggling. As long as they don't turn the ball over. If Ritter keeps the ball out of the Jets' hands on their turf, on their half, I think they'll have a good chance of winning this game. So I'm going to take the Falcons money line.
Yeah, I'm leaning on the Falcons money line as well. Tim Boyle is terrible also, but I think a lot of like watching some of the highlights from that game, it just goes back to the fact that Nathaniel Hackett is terrible.
He's really
Like
bad.
I'm sorry, he was terrible with the Broncos. He made Russell Wilson look terrible, who looks good again this year. He doesn't look great. He looks good again this year, and they're winning football games right now. As much as you want to say Zach Wilson isn't great, he's had moments where he's looked like he could be good, and they're not letting him get out of the pocket and roll and
No,
play Zach Wilson football like he did at BYU. Let him get comfortable, and that's not what Nathaniel Hackett does. Nathaniel Hackett says, "Give me Aaron Rodgers, who's not going to move, and let me sling it." That's not the
exactly.
kind of QB he is. Tim Boyle went in there and looked equally bad. Hackett needs to go. I think he's going to stay just because Rodgers will try and be back at the end of this year, and then go into next year with him. But he's terrible. If Rodgers gets hurt again, get rid of him immediately. Um, I can't see the Jets winning, but their defense is just that good. The Falcons' defense is fairly good as well, but against a poor offense, it could be another low-scoring game.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the
I
Falcons
think
money line's
Falcons
the
will
safe
win.
play. Yeah.
Yeah,
It just feels like the Falcons have a shot in that division at least. The Cardinals and the Steelers. Steelers, man, they had 400 yards of offense without Canada calling plays. I was pretty dang impressed with that. Cardinals are kind of in shambles still. Kyler Murray obviously had a pretty good first couple games back, but last week was a little bit rough. I do like the Steelers in this game. Their defense is absolutely flying, and they're going to sack Kyler at least 3 or 4 times, if not more. So if you can get that as a prop somewhere, Steelers to get 3 or 4 more sacks, I love that. But yeah, I'm taking Steelers money line at minus 270 at home.
yeah. The Steelers are up to 7-4 now. Had 400 yards for the first time in 58 games. Canada was 0 for 44, getting over 400 yards as the offensive coordinator. First game
That's
without him
rough.
over that. 100 yards to Fairmouth over the middle of the field. That was obvious that they wanted to start moving the ball over the middle of the field. First play, 25 yards to Fairmouth over the middle. They didn't do that once with Canada. I think that the Cardinals are ready for that and they prepare for stopping the middle of the field, which I think opens up kind of near the hash marks. So I expect probably a big game from Deontay Johnson. Actually, I'm probably going to go with Pickens just because Deontay has been having a lot of beef with the team recently,
Yeah.
and so Pickens will probably end up having a pretty good game. He hasn't done much, recently at all. I do think Steelers win at home. Kyler might end up on IR again just to finish out the year with 2 wins so that they can get a higher draft pick. If he's getting sacked a lot, he could get hurt. And if that's the case, just put Clayton Tune out there for the rest of the year. The season's already a wash. Try and get a better draft pick. Try and get Marvin Harrison or even a lineman to
Yeah.
support. whoever
As
they
soon
go
as
in
they
with in
got
the
rid of
future.
Dobbs, it felt like they just pretty much gave up. They're
Yeah, they got
expecting
ran by the
Kyler to come
Rams.
back. They were expecting Kyler to come back when they were 1-0 for and turn everything around. It's like that's just not what you do with all the turmoil that they've had in the last 2 years. So,
Yeah, new
um,
coach is good though. I
yeah,
mean, they've been competitive in a lot of games with the roster they have. It's very impressive.
yeah, that's true. They have been able to run the ball pretty well, so that's at least a plus side for them. Dolphins, the Commanders, just lines at 9.5, and I'm taking it for the Dolphins. I think that they're going to smoke the Commanders in this game. It's probably going to be like 41 to like 24 or something. I think it's probably going to be like a 14, 17 point game. So I just love the 9.5. Yeah, I'm just going to take it there.
Yep, I think I'm going to take that as well. It's in Washington, I think, so it scares me a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh, but the Cowboys just absolutely ran the Commanders. The Dolphins should have no problem running them.
yeah.
Um, I'm surprised Ron Rivera still has a job. He needs to just stop.
Retire.
But
Yeah.
they might let him go through the end of the year because the season's a wash at this point. Might
I
as well
think
just
that's
stick
what
with
the
Sam Howell.
Chargers. Yeah, I think that's what the Chargers are doing with Staley too. Is they're just going to let him ride the end of the season because they're already kind of figuring out that it sucks and it's a wash.
But yeah, I mean the Chargers though.
Yeah, I
Look
mean,
at the
with that
team.
roster, it's tough
You
to
got six
believe. It's
games
so
left.
tough to
Yeah,
believe. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We'll see.
There's just no one out there right now, I think, that can really turn it around at this point. So you just kind of have to let it ride for the rest of the season, then hopefully bring in a new culture with a new coach. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think the Dolphins right now are freaking wagon, and the Commanders are definitely struggling. So -9.5 feels right. I like Tyreek to score a touchdown in this game too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed.
Broncos and the Texans. This is pretty nutty game, honestly, in Houston.
Game of the week. Yeah.
Yeah, Texans just lost last week to the Jags. It was a pretty good game in Jacksonville, or I think it was in Houston.
It was in
Um,
Houston.
yeah, it was in Houston. But yeah, anyways, this is in Houston again. The Broncos have won 5 straight. They're up to 6-5 now. They're an absolute wagon. Russell Wilson's figured it out. I think he is one of the best QBRs in the league still. Taking him against the Texans +150. I feel like that's just a huge number for a Broncos team that's won 5 in a row. With a Russell Wilson that's playing some of his best ball, I feel like that's pretty hard to bet against. So taking the Broncos money line.
Yeah, I was kind of leaning on that. I don't know though. I kind of feel like the Texans aren't going to lose back to back at home. We did say we liked the Jags last week, so I'll say we got that right. It
True.
was kind of a lean, so we were unsure. And I said that if Houston comes out wearing bright red, I'm going to take them. They did, and they lost, so that was unfortunate. They look good doing it, so that's all
Yeah,
that matters, right? 58
it's still a
yards.
good
Hey,
game.
shout out.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a great game. Jaguars almost blew it. Instead, they're tied or maybe second in the AFC right now. I think
yeah.
tied for second in the
I
AFC.
think Baltimore
Uh,
and the Chiefs are right there as well.
Baltimore's won because they got 9 wins, but the Jags, Chiefs, and someone else all have 8 wins.
Dolphins.
Dolphins.
Yeah,
Yep. So yeah, I kind of feel like Broncos got to lose eventually, and their schedule still has them making the playoffs. I think the Texans need to win this one more. I do think they still have the Colts and Titans, maybe. So it's also not the hardest road, but I can't see them losing back to back at home. Uh, First thought, I was thinking Broncos are going to win. Right now, I'm thinking Texans, so I'm probably not going to touch it.
yeah. Fair enough. Browns and Rams. The Browns looked pretty rough without their starting QB last week. The Rams on the other side absolutely crushed the Cardinals. So Rams being at home, Matt Stafford back being healthy, looking pretty good. I like him. I like the Rams even without Cooper Cup. I think that he's got enough places to distribute the ball, and I think the Rams are going to be able to take it against Browns with a team without a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dorian Thompson Robinson went to the concussion protocols. I think what he went to, he got a
Mm-hmm.
concussion. So I think he's going to probably be out this week. Obviously, Deshaun's out for the season. PJ Walker, I don't expect to do much. Maybe they'll put up 17 or something. Uh, as long as the Rams, do that, they should win. So 20-17 could be a close game. I don't expect the
Yeah.
Rams to blow them out or anything because that is a good defense for the Browns. It should be a good game. I do think the Rams are going to come out on top, and whoever's throwing the ball. If it's PJ Walker or whatever, take him to throw a pick. Take Stafford
Yep.
to throw a pick. That's kind of what they do.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. Niners and Eagles, that's NFC championship rematch. Probably
that's game of the week.
that's
Yeah,
for sure game of the week.
yeah,
But Niners are favored by 2.5 points away, and that's pretty interesting. The Niners have been a wagon. They pretty much go on winning streaks or losing streaks. And right now they just happen to be playing some of their best ball after picking up Chase Young, having him on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. Um, the Eagles are due for a loss. I thought it was going to be last week against the Bills, but they absolutely choked it. So I'm expecting the Niners to hand them that loss this week.
yeah. I got the Niners winning this one. It's a rematch. Everyone's going to be on edge about it,
Yeah.
and it's a huge game because if the Niners win this, they kind of control their own destiny in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They would need the Eagles to lose one more the rest of the way, but if they win out, they'll end up taking that one seed from the Eagles. So this is a huge game for them because if they lose, they're going to have to go play in Philly again in that NFC Championship game. Assuming the Cowboys or Lions don't find their way into it.
Yeah.
Um, I like the Niners at home, or no, it's in Philly.
Yeah, it's in
I still
Philly.
like them. Yeah, I think the Niners going and they get this win. There's going to be a lot of talk about we would have beat you last year if we had
Yep.
Brock Purdy, and so there's going to be a lot of that coming into the game. So part of me is like, now they have Brock, they're still going to lose. So I'm kind of torn there, but I'm just going to stick with Niners money line. Just gut feeling. I think they have the
Yeah.
better team. Eagles have yet to look like a great team. They just keep barely pulling off games, starting slow. I don't think that's going to cut it against the Niners.
Yeah, I feel like the Niners at minus 155 is pretty safe here. It just feels like the Eagles are due for a loss. This is definitely one of the better teams, if not the best team they've played all season. So I expect the Niners to come in and hand them an L. Chiefs and the Packers. Packers obviously got a nice dub last week. Chiefs are on a bit of a roll. Had a couple shaky weeks, had a tough time scoring in the second half of games, but they brought that back last week after having a huge second half. Chiefs are a bit of a wagon again. It's tough not to bet on them, so I'm just taking a money line at minus 310. It's not a great number, but the Chiefs are an absolute wagon. I mean, it's their
What's the
dynasty.
lineup?
Minus 310 right now. The line, I believe, is 8 last I checked.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so yeah, I just like the Chiefs money line. I feel like that could be a little bit of a trap with how well the Packers have been playing the last couple of weeks. So I'm just gonna stick with the money line.
It's in Lambeau too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take the Chiefs by a score. I think 6.5 is fair in case they win by 7. Um, I might even take that at 5.5 because I could see it being a 23-17 kind of game,
Yeah.
where they either get a couple field goals or have a missed PAT or something like that. The Chiefs should cover, I think, the 8 but the Packers play tough at Lambeau. This has a chance to put them back at 500. I really don't think they're that good of a team, though. So I do think
No.
Chiefs should cover 8. They should cover 8. Should cover a 5.5, 6 alternate. So I think that's a safe play.
Yeah, but for the Packers, I mean, at least on the bright side, they're a team that's developing really well. Their quarterback is starting to kind of get into a groove and learn his offense, and their defense is pretty young now, and they're really starting to kind of play together. Had a really solid week last week for them, especially with that fumble for 6 or interception for 6. That was awesome. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking the way the Packers are playing, but the Chiefs are just in their dynasty right now. Bengals and Jags is the last game. I believe that's the Monday night game. Jags are 7.5 point favorites. I'm not exactly sure.
I think it's
But
7 or 8. Yeah.
yeah, the Bengals looked pretty rough from last week. I think they only put like 7 points up or 10 points up. So for that reason, I'm actually going to buy 1.5 for the Jags. I'm going to take a minus 9.5. I got that at plus 100, so even money. I feel like the Jags are going to, this is kind of their game to show up and show out. They're at home. Bengals are kind of off of a rough streak. Jake Browning isn't really too great, and the Jags defense is pretty solid, and they're really flying around after the last couple games. So I like the Jags.
Yeah, I like the Jags too. I don't love the line. Like they should easily win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Browning didn't look that bad. Just the game play was kind of slow with the Steelers back and forth. I think they did only score 10, losing 16-10.
Yeah.
Um, so it was kind of a strange game. Jags defense isn't as good. They're fairly good. They're young. They're quick. Um, and the Jags should win fairly easily. I do think they win the game, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be a blowout. I could see it under 10 for sure. So I would just take Jags money line and maybe throw it in as a parlay with like Cowboys money line or something where you're not going to get great value out of either as 7-point favorites, but I think they both should win.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe. But yeah, that wraps it up for NFL. UFC is back this weekend with UFC Fight Night. We got Beneil Dariush is fighting, I can't remember, Armin Sarukian, I believe. Um, Anyways, that'll be a great fight, but I'm not going to be betting on that one. I do think that Beneil has a small chance to win at plus 225. So if you're a Benny fan, I would recommend throwing a little bit of money on him this weekend. But the fights I am betting on are Costa to win at minus 240, Soriano to win at minus 245, and then I'm betting Brady and Gastelum to go over 1.5 rounds. Brady's 15-1. Gastelum is an absolute stud at 170. He looked really good flying around. He's got heavy hands still. He's based from wrestling and jiu-jitsu, so I expect him to be fine on the ground. So yeah, over 1.5 rounds there at minus 200 is pretty safe. And I feel like that fight, I just can't pick a winner. And then other than that, Jalen Turner to win is minus 225. He's fighting Bobby Green. Bobby Green's like 39 years old. Just took out Grant Dawson, who's a pretty good prospect, but he just found the right shot and knocked him straight out. I don't think he's going to be able to do the same thing against Jalen Turner, who's kind of like a spider out there. He's super long and lengthy. I think that Bobby Green's going to have a tougher time hitting him. So those are my 4 picks for UFC this week.
Right on. Yeah, and I was going to say, with this Eagles-Niners matchup, I think it's going to be very interesting and a tell for what's going to happen in the NFC Championship. I do expect to see the Niners win this game. And if they can do it in ugly fashion, I think that they should handle them easily in the playoffs, assuming that that's the matchup that they have. If the Eagles win this game at home, they're going to have it again at home. It's hard to beat the same team twice. So I think it is going to be very interesting to see how this game plays out. I know the Steelers did it, the Rams did it, and I know the Pats did it, where they lost 3 games in a row mid-season, and they ended up going and making and winning the Super Bowl. That scares me for the Niners because I don't like the Niners, but I did have them in the Super Bowl against the Ravens. Obviously, if you listen preseason, if you talk to me at all, that's been my pick from the start. Ravens look good. Niners are getting hot. They look good.
Yep.
Someone's going to have to knock off the Eagles at home, though. Niners might get lucky and have the Cowboys do it for them if that's how we match up. That's probably the best bet for them, but otherwise they'll have to do it on their own. This should be a good week of football. Excited for it. Look in the chat. We'll get the parlay out to you guys. I think we're feeling good this week. We keep getting 1 pick away. We had one hit a couple weeks ago.
The last week was so unlucky. We had the Broncos money line. We had LSU. We had the only thing was Bama that lost, and they ended up covering. So we should have just taken money line, but that's on us. So we'll try and be better.
Even so, Alabama had a pick. It should have been a pick 6, which would have covered the 9 points.
True.
And they called them down at the 3-yard line. I had the parlay, crushed me because I watched the score flash to 33-24, I think it was, and then they ended up calling them down at the 3. So it was rough. But feeling good. I think we're going to get something this week. Obviously, start of big games for college football, and the slate's getting smaller. Otherwise, just keep up with us throughout the weeks. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you want to hop on the show. And, no more racing, no more college football soon. So we'll have to find something else to be talking about.
Yeah. So, until then, thank you guys. Like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you want to hear next. And, we'll see you next week. Peace, guys.
All right, guys. See you.